Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Erin Bradley. Erin is a dynamic speaker, seasoned trainer, and best-selling author of Pursuing Freedom, Be Yourself, Increase Your Referrals, and Have More Fun Growing Your Business. She's also the host of the acclaimed real estate podcast of the same name, Pursuing Freedom. With extensive experience in the real estate industry, Erin has faced the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, riding the roller coaster of broke to burnout and everything in between. Through these experiences, she's realized that the stress of overwhelm can be as debilitating as financial hardship. Determined to transform her life, Erin redesigned her business to align with her vision of fulfillment and now dedicates her life to teaching her fellow freedom seekers to do the same. Believing that you should never give up or settle, both in life and business, Erin exemplifies the idea that anything is possible with the right mindset, effective systems, and a supportive team. I'm excited to have Erin on the show today to share how she helps others build a life they don't need a vacation from. And with that, Erin Bradley, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. I'm so excited to finally be here with you. This is so awesome.
I know, and it's going to be fun because we tend to have a good time talking. I don't know what it is. We have a good flow going. Anytime we chat, it seems to go a lot longer than we think it's going to go, as evidenced by the fact that we started talking about 20 minutes ago and then went, hey, we got to hit record and get going on this thing. Let's do it. So with that, Erin, tell me about your childhood. What was it like growing up? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I'm the youngest of five kids, and my dad was pretty entrepreneurial. Actually, both my parents were. He was a stockbroker and wealth manager in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
And it's funny because I can't believe how my story has unfolded. As the youngest of five, by the time I was graduating high school and going to college, all four of my older siblings had gotten, we all got good grades, went to good colleges, and pretty much everybody went to school for business. My dad had this idea that regardless of what we wanted to study and major in, we should also think about having a business degree. And it kind of started, my oldest brother, he went to business school, then my sister went to business school, and then my other sister told my dad that she wanted to be an art major. And he said, well, even an artist needs to know how to sell their artwork. So why don't you get a business degree and minor in art? So she did. She got a marketing degree, minored in art. And now, 30 years later or something, she is actually a full-time professional artist after a career of corporate America and
Wow.
marketing and international travel and all kinds of things. And so I came into college, checked the box for finance, and went to Boston College, and then quickly realized I didn't want to be a stockbroker, and I wanted to switch to the School of Education and become a teacher. And I contacted the school about it, and they said, well, if you switch from the School of Business to School of Education, you can't study abroad in your junior year. And I already had the travel bug. And so I asked my dad for advice, which is kind of a theme of many turning points in my life. So
Mm.
getting advice from my dad. And he said, well, you can always be a teacher with a business degree, but you can't be a financial advisor with an education degree. So just get the business degree
Mm.
and you can still
Consistent advice from
teach.
dad. Get the business degree, right?
Yeah. So, and it's interesting now as a parent that I'm kind of having the same conversations
Mm.
with my kids. But so I did that. I switched to operations and strategic management, and I studied companies like IKEA and Southwest and other companies that were really built on great culture and systems. And I really enjoyed it. And then after college, I actually moved to Barcelona for a couple years and taught English, and
Oh,
came back
wow.
to the States and taught Spanish, and then moved to Denver, Colorado on a whim and started teaching English as a second language. And then several years later, somebody said to me, I think you'd be good in the mortgage business. And I remember saying, no, 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 that's not for me. Like I am not cut out for corporate America. They're like, no, no, it's different. Trust me, just meet my friend. Turns out it was a small Latino mortgage company that needed a bilingual American to help
Mm.
with some admin and marketing stuff. So I took the part-time job, continued teaching English as a second language at a university at night. And I saw the loan officers that were coming to the office in jeans and a t-shirt and doing yoga in the middle of the day and traveling when they want, and then, putting on the suit to go to closing and coming back with their big commission checks.
Yeah.
And I remember
Sounds
thinking,
good.
that's the life for me. I don't want to be stuck here at a desk. And if I'm a full-time teacher, I don't have the freedom to travel whenever I feel like it. You have to be here in the classroom to be a teacher. So I thought this is it. I'm going to be a loan officer. I'm going to go 100% commission.
What year was
2007,
this?
2007, like a
Oh,
genius.
I knew you're going to drop that fish hook right at some point. It's like, come on, man, really? So you get in the mortgage business 2007.
Yeah, I
Things
go
tea kettle
100%.
hot. Anybody with a pulse could make money in the mortgage business, the real estate business in 2006, seven, right? Killing
Yes.
it. You're like, that's it. I'm just going to get my Bentley now.
Oh, it's going to be great.
Be
I
great.
mean, freedom and flexibility, footloose and fancy free. Here I
Right.
come. So by the summer of 2008, I'm a year into being 100% commission, and I have fallen on my face completely. I mean, I'm at financial rock bottom. I've maxed out every credit card, tens of thousands of dollars in credit card debt. I get a lead for a client in July of 2008, and it's hot in Denver in the summertime,
Mm,
and I don't have enough money for gas. So I have to ride my bike 5 miles across town to meet this
no.
client. Yeah, and I was like, I got to get there early so I can let the sweat dry off, and I have to think about what can I wear to look professional and ride a bike and be sweaty. So I get there early, and unfortunately, the client also got there early, and he introduced himself to me at the counter at Starbucks as my credit card was being declined for a
Oh,
$2 cup of coffee, back when coffee was $2.
right.
But the worst part was that that's the card I thought would work.
Oh,
So I didn't want to try another one and the gig would be up. So anyway, that's kind of the long-winded version of how my childhood led me into business on a long and winding road through travel, and how my desire to travel and have the freedom led me to take the leap and be 100% commission, but to do so without any game plan, no financial safety net, no systems in place, no confidence really as it relates to sales. And I was just a hot mess by the summer of '08. But, I asked my dad for advice once again, and he said, do you think you're going to be good at this someday, Erin? And I was like, I think I could. I care about people. I want to give good customer service. He's like, well, if you think you're going to be good at it someday, do whatever it takes. So I've opened another credit card, bought internet leads, hired a coach. Most people won't do that when they're
wow.
struggling, but that was the turning point, right? It was like the beginning of recognizing that I can't do it alone. I'm going to need some help. And in hindsight, I remember thinking this credit card debt is embarrassing, but I had also contemplated going back to grad school to get a master's in translating and interpreting. So after I had come back from Spain, I was like, well, I had contemplated grad school. So if I had gone to grad school in Monterey, California, like I had been considering, I would have been tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. So I remember thinking, instead of beating myself up for finding myself in this financial situation, I'm going to look at this as my grad school tuition, right? Like I had to learn.
Mm.
And so I've got to invest in myself, and I did, and that was the beginning of a good turning point where things started to look up for a little while till the next time, right?
Yeah, but I love, so the things that come out there in your story for me are most people, when faced with that, really kind of kicking the knees, would have retreated, right? Would have said, okay, I've been at this. Because if you've burned through resources like that, you've experienced many losses as you're burning through resources, right? So you probably had some opportunities you thought you were gonna close, or some things were gonna happen, but they just weren't, or they weren't happening in the amount that you needed. So you're burning cash, racking up debt. And most people, I think, would start to tap the brakes or go, well, maybe this isn't for me, especially in '08, mid '08, there's the I'm trying to remember the actual time, the calendar when '08, everyone seemed to recognize this is a debacle, right? Like Bear Stearns failed. I want to say it was in the spring of '08, maybe March, April, May, somewhere in there. And that was like the big wake up call, like a 100-year-old Wall Street firm fails. And it's like, oh, this is the first time that's ever happened. And then one of the other ones failed. And then it was like, oh, we could have like a whole meltdown of the financial system, right? It's like, we're going to break the buck. And all these other words were being used that had never been used before in finance, right? Like the
Yeah.
money market may not be worth $1 anymore for your dollar that you put into it. It may be worth less. And so I think a lot of people, and I have my own story on that, because I was in the financial world for a brief moment in '08 when all that was going on. Most people would have said, I'm going back to teaching. I mean, Spain was looking pretty good when I was teaching English as a second language. I go back to Barcelona, or I'll do whatever I've been doing that led me to have some amount of financial success and confidence I could pay my bills. I'll do that. But you didn't. You pressed in and you kind of doubled down by opening another credit card and going deeper into debt, right? That's a real belief. Talk about
Yeah.
that. I mean, where that comes from.
Well, there's a couple things to touch upon there. First of all, when I was teaching English in Barcelona, it was to the tune of roughly $900 a month, cash
Boom.
under the table. So I was living like a hobo and
Okay.
rubbing pennies together for the days leading up to payday. But I always had enough money for wine somehow. I don't know. But all that to say is that when this was all happening, I was a witness to my colleagues who had been achieving high levels of financial success who were crumbling. And
Mm,
I remember there being a very clear perspective of, I have nothing to lose. I have only one way to go but up. So when people started asking me, like, oh, mortgage business, huh? Like, how's that going for you? And I was like, well, I'm just getting started and I have only one way to go but up. I've got nothing to lose. I mean, I'm already in the red, so it can't get too much worse than it already is. And there were people around me that have built lives on being accustomed to a certain level of revenue each month. So they had mortgage payments they couldn't afford and things like that. Where for me, I was already kind of living with a marginal amount of expenses and overhead that it didn't take much for me to start to cover that and then
mm,
start to thrive. So I think I was lucky in a weird way. And with my coaching company now, I've talked about that with real estate agents and mortgage lenders that have gotten licensed in the past few years, that it's actually a beautiful thing to come into the industry where there's a lot of people feeling woe is me about what the rates used to look like and what the business used to look like, and they're comparing now to what was, and then that's actually slowing their ability to create progress and breakthrough because they're in the dumps right now. If you're just coming in and all you've ever known is this is what it is and you've got to work with what you've got, you're going to build from where you are. And I think that's an important thing for people to think about, is like, it doesn't really matter what once was. It only matters where you want to go.
mm,
And likely what worked for you in that environment is not going to be sustainable in this new environment. So we need to be constantly looking ahead and designing our future to align with the reality we're in now.
mm. Yeah. I love that. It's the idea that the tools and the things that got you here are not the things that are going to take you to the next place. In fact, they may be the exact thing that keep you back, hold you back. And it's also the other thing that pops up for me is I have friends that have been in the, I guess, hospitality slash liquor and wine and spirits business. And they're like, it's always just a death knell if they hire somebody during what they call in the industry OND, which is October, November, December, is when all the liquor gets sold. So if somebody comes in as a new salesperson during October, November, and December, the money is just flowing like water, right? Because everybody's having parties and everybody's buying boozes, gifts, and all this stuff. It's their biggest 3 months of the year. And then January comes and it falls off a cliff, right? And you get a little blip for the Super Bowl, and then it's like crickets until the 4th of July. So the people that come in and during that high season, they're not prepared for the slower time, right? They're not ready for it. Versus if you come in March, you learn how to make it work when it's a very dry season, right? Very tough time. So now you're prepared. You're putting the systems in place where you can take advantage of that, right? So I love the idea that you came in at the hardest point and you're like, man, the only place to go is up. I didn't have the luxury of being able to be sloppy or loose with systems and processes and the way I did things because money was flowing. You have a dog on your lap all of a sudden. What's happening?
He's a sneaky little puppy, and if I don't let her jump up on my lap, she'll interrupt our podcast and start barking.
You can tell where she's like, I'm not quite in the frame, so I'm going to stretch my head a little higher, a little attention seeker.
Yeah.
Love it. So yeah, so you came in at a hard season, but you found the silver lining, if you will, around look, I'm going to be good, and it's the only place I can go from here is up. I've seen it when it was pretty good. I've seen others doing it, and man, I had some neighbors too, back to me, but I had some neighbors that were in that mortgage business during the heyday, and driving crazy cars and just with the attitude and all the stuff. And I'm talking to him like, you are a knuckle dragger. There's barely anything coming out other than CO2 of your mouth, and yet you're having all this success. but it was kind of market conditions, right? Because when it turned, a lot of people got washed out that just didn't
Yeah.
really have any business being in there. But all right, so you start building a business. So talk about that. I'm curious too on your Starbucks story. What happened at the when your credit card denied? Did you like get a water, or did you yell at the barista for not knowing how to work the machine? What was going on there? And then what happened?
I am embarrassed to admit that I I s- I had a second of feeling stunned because honest to God, I thought that was the card that might work. And I was thinking there's no way I can try another card because the chances are it's going to be declined and then he's going to know the truth. So I just lied. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so weird. That's my debit card. It's the only card I have on me. I'm going to have to call the bank. Like, I'm so sorry. And then the
Yeah,
guy bought my coffee. And I just remember the feeling of absolute humiliation.
right,
I'm supposed to be buying his coffee
right.
and I can't buy his coffee. I can't even buy mine. So
Humbler.
yeah, it was definitely nuts. Well, what ended up happening was I invested in a coach and I said to the coach, I'm desperate. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I wanted to get good grades. So I did everything they told me to do, right? Just followed the plan to the letter. And it was fine. But there's one little piece about do whatever it takes that, really comes back to even the title of the name of your podcast, Return to Authenticity, is that was the piece that was missing, was the authenticity. So the truth of the matter is, I was struggling financially. I had a problem to solve. I had a void to fill. I was feeling insecure, overwhelmed, regret, shame, all these things, right? So I'm in the negative side of the spectrum and I'm given an action plan. And out of sheer desperation, I muster up the courage to execute the plan. And it's fine. I start getting results and closing deals. But honestly, Eric, I felt like an imposter.
Mm,
I'm wearing the female suit sitting at the big mahogany desk and making the cold calls and doing the things, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. And it's fine. I'm getting deals, but I never quite felt like I belonged and I couldn't put my finger on it. I just remember saying to my husband, I feel like an alien. I just don't know if I'm really cut out for this business. And to your point, as the market was crashing, I was also a witness to the types of unscrupulous behavior that were
mm,
rampant in our industry. And I remember being a witness to that as well and thinking to myself, I am not cut out for this because I am not like that. I am not going to do this unethical stuff that people are doing. Like I could just see the writing on the wall and see through all of it. And I just decided I'll do it my way, right? But there was just something missing. So this went on for the next several years until 2011 when I read The Go-Giver by John David Mann and Bob Berg. And if anybody is listening, you know that the philosophy of the go-giver is that the goal is to give more in value than you hope to receive in payment, or be of value above and beyond what you get paid to do. And if you
mm,
haven't read The Go-Giver, I highly recommend it because it truly changed my life. It was a complete paradigm shift for me because up until that point, the game plan was all about marketing me, right? Me being top of mind.
mm,
Me. So every time I pick up the phone, it's because I have a problem and I've been told if I pick up the phone and make these calls, I'm going to solve my problem. And so inevitably, I felt a lot of resistance around the activity itself. Like this feels really self-serving, but the reality is I'm freaking desperate, so I'll do whatever it takes, right? That's where I feel there's like a little bit missing from do whatever it takes, and it's the authenticity piece.
mm.
So I read this book and I think to myself, up until now, I've been sending mailers, home improvement tips, turn back the clock reminders, all the stuff to make me top of mind. None of that is really necessarily of value to the recipient, right? And so, what I talk about a lot with my coaching students is that when I'm sitting here on a Monday morning thinking, I need money, what could I do? What should I do? And I've attended the sales training and they gave me the playbook and they told me how many calls to make and notes to write and people to see. And here I am just mustering up the courage, digging deep from an empty well to go do the things to get the thing to fill my void, right? I it sucks. It's it's a grind, right? And I know that if I do it, I'm going to get the results and I'll feel good about myself. But then I'm back to square one, doing it all over again on this weird hamster wheel. And so I thought to myself, if I'm calling you, Eric, because you're a past client of mine, and I'm getting ready to pick up the phone, my brain starts to activate with all the chatter of, well, Eric doesn't need to buy or sell a house right now. He got a rate of 3% a couple years ago. He doesn't want to talk about real estate. All these things start popping up in my brain. The truth is that's correct, right? Like when you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Eric, and you're excited about something, or you're worried about something, or you've got a project you're working on that has your wheels turning in the middle of the night, driving you nuts, one thing is for sure, you're not thinking about my business, my pipeline, my bank account, my kids' college tuitions. You're thinking about you.
Mm.
That's natural. So what I decided was, if I wanted to take the go-giver philosophy and turn it into a strategy that would create predictable growth in my business, I needed to take my work hat off and replace my insecurity with curiosity.
Mm.
Come from a place of what's really going on with Eric. Because if I want to be a resource to Eric when he doesn't need my services, which is probably only 3 to 5 or maybe even 7 years, what does it mean to actually be of value to you? So I ended up coming up with this concept of developing a tribe of trusted local service providers that could be a resource to my clients when they don't need my services, and to give me a reason to call.
Mm.
So when I called, instead of saying, "Hey, how have you been? How's the house? Do you know anybody who needs a mortgage?" which always felt dreadful for me.
Yeah.
Instead, I would say, "Hey, Eric, I'm working on building this old school Rolodex of trusted local service providers. I want you to think of me when you need anything, not just when you need a mortgage. And I have a gap in my directory for a good, you're in finance. Do you have a good CPA, a financial advisor, an estate attorney, a real, all these different things that might align with you and what I know about you? Or maybe you're a chiropractor. And I'm like, do you know a good massage therapist, an acupuncturist, any PT people? I want to provide resources for health and wellness, financial services, home contractors, and everything in between. Maybe you're a contractor, you're a general contractor. So I might ask you who you love to refer for electrical work, roofing, flooring, handyman, so pretty straightforward. That was the impetus of my call.
Mm.
And then you'd inevitably have people to introduce me to that you love, which gives me my next action item. So every interaction was breeding multiple more interactions. So I didn't have to keep thinking, who should I call to get a lead? I
Mm.
just took my work hat off and got into the activity. And then I would find out what's going on with you. Like, how are the holidays? And then you tell me, oh man, it was crazy. My mom ended up in the hospital. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to send a handwritten note or some flowers. Or you got a new puppy. Oh, I'm going to send you a dog toy. You're expecting a grandbaby. Your kid got into college. Like, there's always something happening. That's what's on your mind. That's
Mm.
what you're excited about, what you're working on, what you're worried about. And so that was it. I just became unleashed. And I found myself in much higher engagement with my past clients, my community. I was no longer thinking of myself as this desperate mortgage professional. I was just being myself. And it was way easier. That's why my book says, be yourself, increase your referrals, and have more fun growing your business. And what ended up happening was the business doubled overnight, like absolutely exploded.
Mm.
And I went from averaging, 30 some closings a year for the previous 3 years since first hiring the coach to doing nearly 80 in 2012 by myself with no systems, no support. I never expected that level of volume. I was earning way more than I ever anticipated of myself. And at first, I convinced myself that I'm lucky. So
Mm.
even though I was tethered to my phone 24/7 and pregnant with my second child and drowning in business and frankly in life because I had a toddler and another one on the way, at first I just tried to suck it up. I was like, this is it. This is what success looks like and feels like. But I was miserable. And I remember asking advice of those in my office that I considered to be ahead of me in the game, doing more volume than me. Their kids were a little older. And they all admitted that once their kids go to bed at 7, 8 o'clock at night, they're back in their home office till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night working.
Mm.
And I remember again talking to my husband thinking like, I just don't know if this is for me. I thought I was signing up for freedom and flexibility, but I work on every vacation. I haven't taken a day off in years. I'm
Mm.
tethered to my phone from eyes open till eyes shut. And I don't feel free at all. But I didn't feel free when I was having my credit card declined either.
Mm.
So where is the freedom and flexibility? And so I almost quit the business in 2013. But luckily, someone gave me advice just to get some help. And I started considering the idea of enlisting help in my business, which was terrifying because I was like, who do I think I am? I've been on this inconsistent roller coaster for the past 7, 8 years. But I made a plan and I set a goal. I'm going into 2014 that I would grow my volume again using the same strategy that worked every time, and then be prepared to hire somebody. And so that's what I did in the summer of 14. And the next thing I knew, I more than doubled the business again, and it kind of kept going. I started to realize that I had been my own bottleneck for years. And so I started enlisting the help of people that are smarter than me in other areas. And together we created a small but mighty team, and had a lot of fun. And that's where I felt inspired to teach this process to real estate agents and mortgage lenders and other, people in my industry. And so the teaching led to the book, which led to the podcast, which led to the coaching and speaking. So it's just been this kind of journey. And it's interesting because it kind of comes full circle, right? My dad was right. I am a teacher. Even when I was growing my mortgage business, I grew it by educating my clients and then educating my real estate partners, and now, teaching full time essentially. And I'm doing it with a business degree. So
Right.
it's kind of cool how it
Man.
all came full circle.
All right. So I got to back you up because there's so many cool things to your story that I have questions about. So could you imagine that in 2008, when your credit card's being declined, mid 2008, that someone would come tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, guess what? You're going to be contemplating quitting the business in 2012." And your likely reaction would have been like, "Yeah, probably because I'm complete at that point. I'm exhausted, right? Trying to make this work." And it's like, no, no, you're going to almost quit because of too much success. Like you're too busy and you're burnout and there's too much stuff, too many deals, too much money, too much everything, and you're going to be burnout. What would you have said in that moment? You think about that, 3.5, 4 years. It's less than it takes to get a bachelor's degree. So you're an abject failure at 2008, and three and
Yeah.
a half years later, you're such a success. You're contemplating quitting.
It's crazy. I talk about this all the time because in my coaching community, we have agents and lenders at every level, right? And so when you have somebody that just got their license and they're listening to me talk about preparing for success and planning for the systems and the solid foundation you need to grow a skyscraper rather than just throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. And then you'll find things start crumbling when you start to experience quote unquote success, right? And they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, I realize you're hearing, like, it sounds like a great problem to have would be too much business. But now let's look at this realtor over here who has 8 under contract right now, and her hair is on fire. She's drowning. She's a hot mess, running on fumes, like a chicken with her head cut off. Do you think it's easier for her now to reevaluate the foundation of the structure that she's built unknowingly
Mm.
and then rebuild, like take it down to the studs and rebuild? Or do you think it would be better to start with an intention to work smarter, not harder, and have a plan in place and a vision for what a successful business looks like? Because at least in my industry, the real estate space, realtors and lenders, we take the leap, we go 100% commission, fingers crossed, we hope we get some deals. But our mindset is so small at the beginning, we're just hoping to pay our bills,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
We can't possibly project further into the future that we could find ourselves surviving our own success. And that's why I always encourage people to be careful who you admire, because someone can look like they have it all figured out. And even
Mm.
in some of the pictures I share of me at that time in my life, it looked like things were going great, 2 cute little babies, and earning at a higher level than I ever expected. And I can afford a good living and all the things and all the luxuries. And meanwhile, I was crying myself to sleep. So these are the conversations we have, the honest conversations, like, again, return to authenticity. Let's be honest. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times we get carried away on a train, speeding train that's going off the rails, and we don't even know where it's going. And sometimes we just have to wake up and say, pump the brakes. We've got to pull this thing over for a minute and evaluate the destination, and then make a clear plan for how to get there so that we can enjoy the unfolding. Because most of us think we'll be happier when the business is booming
Mm.
and we have more money. And then we get there and then we think, oh my gosh, I can't even breathe. Once it slows down, I'll come up for a breath of air and be more present with my loved ones and maybe be present on vacation for once in my life. And what happens? The business slows down and we panic and we cancel the vacation and we're not present at all. And we think we'll be happier when it gets busier. It's like this
Yeah.
vicious cycle. So a
Yeah.
lot of what I teach is from the inside out. It's like, how do you find access to contentment and satisfaction and ease and joy and fun? And that's why I say the goal is to build a life you don't need a vacation from. Like, what are your values and how do you put those into your life as rocks in your calendar, in your life, and then design the business to fuel and finance that vision.
Yeah. And what you said about not really defining goals except for these kind of loose goals around, oh, I just hope to pay my bills one day. I think that's pretty common. At least I've experienced that from an entrepreneurial standpoint. When you take the leap and you leave something that's predictable and go into the unpredictable, it's like, well, I want to create predictability and I want to be able to I just want to pay my bills. And it's so easy then for the only metric you're really paying attention to is the dollars, and then ignoring all the other things, right? So then the money will come, right? You start building that, and then you're like, well, wait, there's all these other things that that I want to have: freedom, the ability to take a vacation, the ability to be outside, be healthy, do things that are recreational, whatever, spend time with my family, shocker. Uh, and yet I haven't planned for that. And I don't know. All I know is I'm trying to build it busier and busier and busier. And then the idea that you kind of seesaw back and forth between either too busy or too slow, and how do you find that balance? And to me, as I'm listening to you, the only way you really do it is to have a team and the systems and processes that there are others that are picking up doing the different responsibilities and roles and activities that you've assigned to them on the team, so that as the business comes in, there's people to do that work. It doesn't all just fall to you. So your example, your lady with the 8 closings, she's doing everything in that. I picture right in that scenario.
Yeah.
She's doing it all. She doesn't have a team of people that she can be at the conference and knowing that 8 deals are getting closed that day. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm here and I'm gonna have to do this when I go back to my room at night. I'm gonna have to answer 48 texts and pissed off clients and everything else because I haven't gotten back to them in time, and that stresses me out and all that, right? So we work ourselves into bad service because you can't serve it all,
Yep.
and which creates stress and then poor health and all the other things that you're like, oh man, I wish I could have that again, right? So it's constant. It's like the goal line just keeps changing, right? And the thing that you're striving toward just keeps moving. Oh, it's money one day. No, it's time the other day, and it's health one day and family, and there's you never reach any sort of joy,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And we talked earlier before we started recording about the truth, right? The existential aspect of
Mm,
the limited amount of time we have on this earth. And
mm,
one of the things that has guided me in my lifetime is the unfortunate loss of many loved ones starting from a
mm,
very young age. I lost five of my close friends from fifth grade through the age of 22. And when you have loss like that as a young person, it's just so unusual, right? To go to the same church and the same cemetery,
mm.
again and again and again and again and again, and think to yourself, like, man, is there no hope, right? Or do we take this as evidence that we don't know how much time we've got and make
Yeah.
the most of what we've got? So, there is a piece of me that has always felt deeply connected to the saying, if not now, when,
Mm,
and not as a lighthearted cliche, but truly every time I'm ready to embark upon a decision that may feel like a leap and it might feel scary or, unreasonable or unrealistic or whatever, I always think to myself, if I hear myself saying, I wish I could do that someday, then I like to say, why not now? And then start to unpack all the worst case scenarios of experimenting with this decision that I'm feeling an inclination to go towards. And in that process, we often take the chance, knowing that the worst case scenario is often coming back to where we are right now. So whether that's hiring the team member and it doesn't work out, okay, well, I can come back to being this solopreneur, but there's a saying, the sooner you step away from your comfort zone, the sooner you realize it wasn't all that comfortable.
mm,
And I know that when I retired from the mortgage business after almost 17 years, we were operating at a level that was, my involvement in my business was unrecognizable to what I had been doing as a solopreneur for 8 years. And there was no way for me to break through that ceiling of my personal capacity operating under the same rules and circumstances that I had been. And frankly, I wouldn't have wanted to because it was crushing me. Every time I started to approach the burnout again, it's like approaching a fire. If you've been burned before, you're going to be pretty, cautious as you start to approach that flame again. And so I see this all the time. People, they hit that personal capacity and then they either suck it up and survive success and convince themselves they're fine when they're not, and every other area of their life is crumbling. or they convince themselves they're better off to shrink and do less, like reduce your vision. And that doesn't work because I tried that too.
Mm.
And my business dried up and I found myself in debt all over again, right? And then the third option is scale, which is scary and necessary if you truly want to be a business owner that has a business that runs, whether you're in the mood or whether you're in the country. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to stop the seesaw. I could see so clearly, like when my energy was high, my business would grow. My energy would become compromised. My business would decline. Then I would get desperate and I knew what to do. So then my business would grow, right? And that comes back to like, you can have the playbook, you can know what you're supposed to do, and you can still find yourself not in the mood and inconsistent. So if you could address the inconsistency with the help of somebody else, you're going to unlock the portal to the next level, which you simply cannot access doing it the way you've been doing.
Yeah. So how do you keep fear when you talk about a couple things there, taking big leaps, which can be scary, and then the fear, which people speak about the fear of failure. I think it's more personally, I attribute it more to the fear of being judged a failure, right? Like I can sing and dance around my house. If nobody's here, I do it pretty awesome because I've just let it all hang out. But if someone's here, you're more restricted because why? Because I don't want anybody to laugh at me, right? I don't want to be judged a knucklehead or a bad dancer or a bad singer. So I'll just hold it back, which actually makes you worse. It'd be better if you just let it all go. But when people are taking risks, that often is the thing holding them back. Like, oh, I see all the risks. I see the potential for failure. And really, again, I think the judgment of being a failure and then having to tuck tail and go back to where you started. Because that's a common thing to be like, oh, I can always go get a job again, or I can always go back. But it's like, oh, but it's such a humbler, right? I don't want to have to do that. And so better to not try and better to not even try than to try and fail and have to be humbled and come back. I feel like that is often what's going on. What's your take on that, or how have you pushed through that?
Well, every year for the last 10 years, I've been teaching this business planning workshop and lifestyle design really for mostly real estate agents and mortgage lenders. And one of the things that we do before we begin to look ahead is we do some reflection. And there's very specific questions that don't change year after year. It's the answers that change. And one of the sets of questions is, what's the biggest risk you've taken in the last 12 months?
Mm.
And then one of the questions is, what is the smartest decision you've made in the past 12 months? And in all the years of teaching this workshop, probably an average of 95% of people raised their hand if I asked them, was the answer the same for those two questions? And we use the evidence of the past to propel us towards our future. Because if you really slow down enough to think about it, and you talked about this earlier, like could my 2008 version of me have scripted what
Mm.
came to be? Absolutely not, right? If any one of us listening, unless you're only 20 years old, goes back to your 20-year-old self, in some area of your life, you exceeded the expectations of your younger self. That could be in a health goal, like you run a marathon, you've climbed a mountain, you've ridden in a bike race, you've lost weight, whatever. It could be relationships, the family that you have, it could be your business, your financial, but your 20-year-old self could not have scripted all of it. And so if we allow the limitation of our current self to hold us back from dreaming what our potential could be, then we'll only scratch the surface of our full potential. I think we're always on the leading edge of what we want more of in our life or where we want to go next. And I believe that even as you talked about, the goalpost keeps moving. It's like The Gap and the Gain by
Mm.
Benjamin Hardy is that, we celebrate our achievement temporarily before it's replaced with a new desire. And so instead of judging the fact that we always are experiencing a longing for more, let's just accept that part of the human experience. And instead of needing to get there before we feel permission to be happy and fulfilled, let's figure out how to enjoy the unfolding towards
Mm.
there. Because what I've learned is that so much of what transpires between me speaking a desire into existence and the realization of that desire in my life is highly unscripted, right? Like you and I meeting, it's not because I conjured you up with my fear-based analytical brain and thought to myself, I need to hunt him down and we're gonna, we our stars align, our paths
Mm.
cross, and there's synchronicities that happen if you allow them to. And I think that most of us are so clinging on to the bank of the river, so afraid to let go
Mm.
and drop into the river and drop into the flow and see what's downstream because we want to know for sure that it's all going to be easy and safe. And it's like, but in the meantime, that whole comfortable piece is that we're not comfortable here hanging on the bank of the river. Like our arms are getting tired, our hands are getting
Mm.
ripped up, whatever, and we're just like hanging on tight for fear of what could be downstream. When if we just surrender a little bit, loosen up, lighten up, like life is too short. Like really, truly, I tell myself all the time, just lighten up a little bit. You've experienced stress, you've experienced failure,
Mm.
you've experienced self-doubt, fear,
Loss.
uncertainty, all these
Mm.
things, lots of loss. And yet
Still
we
here.
go on, right? And I'm here and I'm doing okay. So what I found is like if I can get more curious about the unfolding than needing to know what it's going to look like, then it's a little bit of a fun adventure because all these unsolicited opportunities, unexpected new relationships, they will always be popping up. And that's another one of the questions in the reflection in that process is, name 3 new relationships you developed in the last 12 months. And everybody always has at least one, I mean, at least 3. And then name 3 relationships you've deepened in the last 12 months. And we use these questions as science to be reminded that when you drop the pin in the GPS for where you want to go and it's far in unfamiliar territory, you've never been there before, you're second guessing yourself all over the place. It's there to remind you haven't even met half the people that are going to show up on your path between here and there, and that there's relationships that exist in your life right now that are going to support you in ways you could never even imagine. So just let it happen, let it unfold. But don't be afraid to say yes to the idea because that's your intuition calling you forward. And I really think the intuition gets suffocated by the analytical brain. So if we can give that heart a voice and not squash it with our brains,
Yes.
I just think life can be so fun and exciting and interesting. And like, it's not a straight line and I'm going to fail again. And I don't even know. It just doesn't matter anymore. It's just like, if I failed this much and I'm still here, then let's have some fun with this.
Right. Yeah, there's so many great pieces that come up in that discussion that you just had there. Have you read Michael Easter's The Comfort Crisis? The book
No,
The
I
Comfort
haven't, but it
Crisis.
sounds like something I should read.
You should read it. It's a great, great book. It talks about this. The net summary of it is that the reason we have so much anxiety, stress, depression is that for the first time in human history, we really haven't had to struggle much, if at all, for anything. We live in 72-degree air. You can order food, have it delivered to your door. Your refrigerator's full, abundance with food. You've clean water in your toilet. You have everything, right? Um, and yet we're the most anxiety-ridden people in human history. And his equation goes to, and the reason is that we just don't struggle anymore, that we don't have the the gift and the benefit of struggle and overcoming struggle and just feeling struggle. And he talks about how misogi is a Japanese term for rites of passage, and that it was common to go through an annual sort of misogi in that culture 1,000 years ago, something that you almost question, you didn't almost, you question whether you could complete it. It was a 50-50 chance whether you would actually complete this task. And in that misogi, there was actually a potential for death. He's like, so you want to do an annual misogi, just rule number one is don't die. So don't have it be so severe that you could die. And the second is you should question whether you actually can complete it and then go through it. Obviously, something that difficult is not going to be all butterflies and balloons and confetti, right? All along that journey. There's going to be really hard moments. And yet those are the things that really shape us. Those are the things that teach us. That's where we recognize the gift of life. That's when you're hungry is when food tastes so good, right? When you're
Mhm.
stuffed all the time, does that next morsel of food taste good? No, it tastes terrible. But if you've had no food for 2 days, man, that next cracker you eat is like, this is the best cracker on the planet, right? And so put yourself in some want around food. He talks about cold, and the book is he tells a story about going on a caribou hunt where he's 30 days completely off grid and having to, you know, living on like minuscule amounts of nourishment, and with this idea that he may never actually see a caribou to hunt it. Really good book, but talks again just about the power of struggle and the story you told about getting into the river and this idea that we're clinging to the shore and it's hard on the shore. We think it's easier. We think it's safer than getting in the middle of that moving river with rocks underneath that you can't see and all that stuff. But it's really, there's challenge on staying on the shore as well. There is challenge there. There's challenge everywhere. and getting in the stream, man, who knows what adventures you see going downstream. You might stub your toe. I mean, the goal would be not to die, not to get pinched and then drown. But the likelihood of you drowning in the analogy of this life thing that we're talking about and taking on some life experience, pretty nominal. And yet you might find some, and you will likely find things that you never anticipated that are completely eye-opening and glorious, right? And if you've ever gone downstream in a rapids, it's pretty awesome, right? And yet scary and terrifying too, you know?
Mhm.
And there's a great quote that is, in order to discover new oceans, one must consent to lose sight of the shore. I can't remember who
Mhm.
said it. A good friend of mine always quotes it, Walter Nussbaum, but he didn't write it. I think it was like Emerson or somebody like that. But anyway, yeah, in order to find new oceans, one must consent to lose sight of the shore. And losing sight of the shore is scary, right? That's the thing. It's really fun to pack the boat, get ready, get your supplies, plan the voyage. But once you push off from the shore, then it's like, well, as long as I can look back and still see the shore, I know I'm probably going to be okay. But it's going over the horizon where now you can no longer see the shore. You're like, whoa, I'm who knows, right? I'm kind of lost out here. But man, the adventure that lives out there is you can't find it anywhere else, right? Um,
Yeah, and I love the Mark Twain quote. It's like 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the things you did. So,
yeah.
explore, dream, whatever. And I was reading another Benjamin Hardy book recently, Be Your Future Self Now. And he talks about how 20 years from now, have a conversation with him or her. And what would he or she tell you? And first thing is that your future self 20 years from now would give anything to have this day you have right now
Mm,
with these people in your life, with this state of health you have, with everything you have in your life. Your 20-year future self would give anything to trade this day to get it again. And what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do with this gift of today? And then, like, you can do the same thing, go back to 20 years ago or even 40 years ago. Like, what would you say to your younger self
mm,
in those moments of uncertainty? You'd probably say, you got this, do
yeah,
it, go for it, take the leap, have a little fun, lighten up. Life's not that
yeah.
serious. It's
I
all
like,
good.
yeah,
It's fine. Like, I love that. I love like the hindsight and the foresight to sort of inform the present, you
yeah.
know?
I love that. And your perspective on loss is so powerful. I've lost a lot of people too, and did at a young age as well. And to me, it like the lesson in there is it is so. I think we mentioned memento mori. I did before starting hitting record. It's a practice of recognizing that it's Latin for remember you will die. And it's designed to help you have joy in life, right? Remember, you will die, so have joy today because you're not dead, right? You're here. What are you going to do with this miracle and this gift that you've been given to be on the planet? Where are you going to take it? What are you going to do with it? Are you going to hide it under a rock? Are you going to just sit on it? Are you going to cling to the shore? Or are you going to get out in the river and see what beauty is out there? And see what you can do and what you can give back. And I love that part of your business as well. This whole idea that when I started to focus on how do I help others instead of how do I help myself, my business exploded. And that
Oh,
to me
yeah.
is just such a great mind of service, right? When we tap into serving others, we tap into something far more powerful than we can through our own discipline and willpower of how I'm going to make myself bigger or better or anything else, right? Serve others, give to others, and man, the bounty I think will be beyond what you can dream, right? Um, so
Yeah.
talk about, I know we only have a few minutes left. You've talked about lifestyle design and designing a lifestyle. And then we said earlier that we never really thought about that. And you're like, I just want to be able to make some money and pay some bills and be cool to have abundant cash or whatever so I can, have some nice things. Now it's like, I don't know, I think I'd rather go skiing, right? I'd rather go outside. So talk about your lifestyle design and how you design things for your day that's beyond just the financial success of your business.
Yeah, so I refer to this as curating vacation energy. So we talk a lot about how especially at least from what I know of real estate agents and mortgage lenders specifically, but I'm sure other business owners can relate, is that the moment you decide you're going to go on vacation, your business picks up. All of a sudden, out of the blue, you get these opportunities. The phone rings and you're like, God, I just wanted to enjoy a couple days off, Why is this happening? It's like annoying. And so I always say, like, that's vacation energy. It's you being enthusiastic, eager anticipation, having a little fun, lightening up. That's different than the version of you that wakes up on Monday morning, puts on the work hat, looks at your bank account and thinks, oh, I got to figure out this problem I got to solve, right? Two different frequencies.
Mm,
And if we want to curate vacation energy, it means prioritizing the things in your life that light you up. I really believe that we attract with the light within us. And that the light is ignited when you're having fun, when you're engaged, when you're just being your normal heart and soul, the version that shows up with loved ones, that celebrates their wins and mourns their losses and feels, right? And
Mm.
then we separate that soul from this work persona that we're supposed to be. That's why I mean, like the imposter syndrome, the filling the shoes of what it's supposed to look like to be successful and pretending to be okay when you're not. That is like ripping apart you into two pieces, right? You and this persona, and then you and your heart and soul. So I try to prioritize things that light me up, and then having faith that when my flame is ignited, it's like a lighthouse in the storm. Ships start coming to port, unexpected opportunities, new relationships, people you meet when you're out there having a good time. And so that's what curating vacation energy means. But more importantly, if you really want to take it down to the tactical level, it's about looking at the relationships you already have in your life and figuring out what it means to engage with them from a place of contribution. Because when you come from a place of contribution, it fills your own bucket to see you fill someone else's bucket, whatever that means,
Mm.
right? To be a resource to somebody. And so if you can make that your mission, your intention is to be of value to every person you interact with each and every day and be awake to that, you'll find more opportunity to be a resource to people. If you're so busy on the bank of the river, clinging,
Mm.
worrying, freaking out, panicking, stressing, wondering, and waiting for the external world to change for you to thrive, then you're going to be stuck there for a long time. And you're missing all the opportunities that are waiting downstream because you're not in the flow, you're not in the river. And so, like, for example, 6 years ago, I started 2019. The market had shifted in 2018. Rates had gone up. The refi business died. I found myself with a team in place and a significant decline in my business. I was back in the red, tens of thousands of dollars in debt on my P&L. And I was, of course, stressed out because I had hired some of my closest friends. I didn't want to let anybody down. So I was committed to the mission of turning the ship around financially within the business and creating an opportunity for us to thrive in any market. And so I applied the same strategy that worked in 2011 and every other time my business dried up for different reasons. And we did a 5x of our volume in 5 months.
Mm.
And the thing is that I knew what to do and how to do it. But what I wasn't willing to do was separate my heart and soul from this persona that needed to create external success. And I prioritized the light within me. So I skied 75 days that year. I live in a ski town. I also took 5 weeks of vacation total that year, not working at all. And on top of the 6 weeks we spent camping on the lake and just kind of like reverse commuting to our daily life in the summertime, I prioritized filling the light within me to like turn the light on and to not allow my heart and soul to be tabled in exchange for this work hat, right? And I think that if we can build success from the inside out in this way, we can create a much more predictable flow of abundance. We can have more fun and we can have more ease in the moments of financial stress because it's not always going to be a straight line.
Mm.
But if we're continually postponing the enjoyment of the light within us, the fulfillment, the joy, the connection, the adventures, till the someday we feel we've earned the right, I think we miss out on way too much. So that's the whole life is too short. It's a cliche, but it's true. So it's just about checking in with myself every single day and asking myself, what would make today a good day? And, yesterday is a perfect example. It's Monday morning, the first real Monday after kids' Christmas break and everything. And most people are coming with like the anxiety of like, oh my God, where's my business? What am I doing? I've been unplugged the last few weeks. I should probably just like get up and hurry up and get to work. And I thought to myself, no, I should get up and go hike up the mountain and go ski for an hour or two, set myself up for success and have an awesome day. And that's what I did. And it was an awesome day. But it's very hard to recognize that and to take the wheel of our own energy, the light within us, and to recognize it's ours to control that dimmer switch and it's ours to design. And it's never too late to start.
Mm. Man, that's powerful. And for me, the lesson there, because I can get in this mode too. I work out every morning, but the workout can become instead of a moment of gratitude, like, isn't it awesome? I'm fit and healthy and I can work out. I'm not sick. I'm not injured. I don't have a family that's sick or injured and I'm having to go tend to them. Like I can come work out. I can spend an hour and being grateful for that as opposed to like checking the box, like, okay, done, did another workout, on to the next thing. And it just becomes a task to do, right? Take that moment of saying, I'm going to be joyful and recognize what a gift it is that I get to do the skiing or the working out or the running or the riding or whatever. and let that fuel the day. It's how we choose to see things, right? And how we choose to approach from a mental perspective, a mindset. Are we going to choose to be, because you can find the pros and the cons, you can find the negative in a lot of things, even some pretty awesome, joyful things. You can still find stress and negativity, and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, but now I'm behind. I got to start. I should have started an hour ago, and whatever, right? But I love that you recognize, when I fill my cup with light, then it overflows into more light, right? And that's an awesome take. I want to be
Yeah,
respectful of your time. We're like 2 minutes to the end. What are you excited about, Erin? What's on the plate, and how do people get in touch with you?
yeah, so I am very excited about 2025. The theme is the quantum leap. I've been using the visual of a butterfly, like a butterfly is crawling along, or sorry, a caterpillar is crawling along, going slow, and then it goes into the chrysalis, and then it has to dissolve and die, and
Mm,
essentially shed its entire former identity to emerge as the butterfly that can go further and farther faster, right? And I think that that's an analogy for life and business, is that in order to emerge into our full potential again and again and experience exponential growth rather than slow incremental growth, we have to allow aspects of our former thoughts, habits, beliefs, identity to dissolve to create space for you to emerge. And that's something I'm excited about. And I think a lot of people are right now. I feel good energy coming into 2025. I feel like a lot of people are really fired up, and maybe it's just the
mm,
new year, but it's exciting.
yeah,
So yeah, I love hearing from people. I love when we're doing these podcasts and hopefully somebody's listening, right? It's like,
yeah.
we're recording, having no idea if anybody's out there. So I always say, if you had a takeaway, if there was an aha moment, or you're inspired, or you're committed to some action that you're going to take, then DM Eric and me. You can find me on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Official. You can find me on LinkedIn, connect with me, shoot me a DM. I love actually connecting in the real world. So, not just putting this content out there and hoping it inspires, but encouraging people to move from inspiration junkie to action junkie.
Love it. I appreciate you so much, Erin. What a great conversation. I knew it would be fun. Time went fast. We're almost to an hour. See? We had more to go. I had to put the brakes on. There's so many things. I had a list of questions here that I just ignored. I was just like letting it flow. I put my C and said, stay in the back. Just
Well,
profile
we'll come
C,
back for
right?
2.0,
All
okay?
right. I have my structure and all my rigidity, like set it to the side. Let's just let it happen. It's good. It's great.
Awesome.
Fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your time and all your knowledge. And I wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. To our audience, thank you for taking time to listen to the show. Always appreciate you do that. If you would share the program with a friend, write a nice review, give us a rating, all those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.